And we are back on the Dear Sisters podcast. I am one of your sisters, the poet Shug. And hopefully, some more of our sisters will be joining us. It's day 4 of the lockdown quarantine, whether children and not school. Just want to take a moment of silence for that activity because, okay. But we are in the second day of Black History. Super excited about being able to celebrate ourselves and really approach the month from a completely different perspective. And just realizing that every day we're making history, every day we are overcoming adversity and adversaries. That's all I know to say. Whether it is out in the world or in legislation or maybe just where we work, it's always a work in progress to overcome and excel. So that is where we are with that. Lots of historical moments and activities. 2023 is really proving to be eye opening, if you will. Eye opening. Definitely had the funeral for the Nichols family, and we usually do a current event. I just, again, just want to take time to stop and recognize how tragic that is for all parties involved, even with the new developments. And, as the sisters were discussing it and talking about different elements, to beat a person is so intimate. It isn't the same as a gunshot. It is the sounds, the feelings, the repetitiveness. And so the fact that it was personal wasn't as shocking. And just thinking about the kids that are now without parents, thinking about the young woman involved, we are definitely looking at a lot of healing that needs to go on and that needs to happen. So, we wanted to spend this time again, not doing the normal, thank you so much, MLK, thank you so much, Malcolm, look at Sojourner Truth, but to spend the time to discuss self-care as we look to make a difference, as we look to pour into the people in their lives and all of the lives and family members and friends and coworkers that we touch. It's going to be increasingly important to take care of ourselves. And so our self-care is going to actually going to start with self-criticism, how we look at ourselves as women, how we evaluate and compare ourselves. There's so many comparisons, especially in our community. We are still looking at colorism. We may have gotten away from the relaxer conversation as we're inundated with opportunities for class action lawsuits. But we still have, oh, you're wearing a wig. Oh, you're wearing your natural hair. Oh, you're locked. And all of the different opportunities to compare each other. So we wanted to start there and just talk about how important it is to not come from a place of superiority or judgment in order to avoid that comparison criticism that tears us down as a community and as women. So wanted to start there. Number 2, our internal self-talk. This is huge. Especially as a poet. Words have so much power, so much meaning. We're taught from a very young age the practice and the tradition of the oratory and oratorical lineage that we come from as storytellers, and for not being able to read and write initially. And so what we say and how we communicate both with each other and our children is so much more important. And there's not enough emphasis on how powerful words are. I always give you the example of when you have 2 children sitting in a dining room. One is surrounded by expensive art and decorative items, affluence, parents that are approving deals and saying yes and absolutely. And then you have another child that's surrounded by things of poverty and bills and no. And how are we going to, when you think about the child that is surrounded by affluence, hearing the word yes 1,000 times more than this child that has been surrounded by poverty and no, we can't, and I don't know how we were going to do that, then you really see, and it's really illustrated, how important words are. And so we want to really get a hold of our internal criticism and the self-talk. I had someone in 2017 tell me, don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't let someone say to your child. And I think that was the first time that I really understood how intentional it is, how important it is to be intentional about that inner dialogue. It's motivating to some point to be hard on yourself, to deliver at a higher standard, but it also can be defeating if you're never speaking life and love and positivity into yourself, and you become obsessed with perfectionism. I had a leader tell me, at some point you're going to have to make a decision to put maybe the least viable product, but yet a product out, right? So it may not be the iMac Pro 14, whatever, or iPhone Pro Digidata 55, right? It may just be that initial, but start somewhere and stop beating yourself up trying to create the perfect outfit, hairstyle, idea, and just be gentle and exercise grace to yourself. And it's Martha Beck that said, much protective self-criticism stems from growing up around people who wouldn't or couldn't love you, and it's likely they still can't or won't. In general, however, the more you let go of the tedious delusion of your own unattractiveness, the easier it will be for others to connect with you. So that inner criticism as Black women, probably for anyone, but as Black women, is going to be so, this is the year to stop it. There's no time like the present to really be intentional about how you talk to yourself and just challenge yourself for 30 days, right? Challenge yourself to just write positive things about yourself, to write, to say out loud, to affirm, to record yourself, just speaking love and light. Write things on the mirror, put Post-it notes up, and just for 30 days, record if you feel different. If you've encountered a different caliber of person as a result of being intentional about that inner dialogue and erasing those feelings of I'm not enough, I don't belong here, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve, because it's tried and true. It's tried and true. You can't talk to yourself like a dog and then live like a pharaoh. It's just not, it's not how it's done. So So far, we have talked about comparative criticism, internal criticism, and being intentional about the inner dialogue that we live up under and understanding where those negative thoughts come from. I think so often people want to challenge us on why and how and the diagnosis, but at some point you just need to start. Like, yes, let's just take weight loss. You're going to need to understand what it is that you're doing to be overweight, but you need to start with something, whether it's walking or not going through a drive-through. You're going to need to start somewhere. And so before you try and heal whatever trauma you've been living with for decades, like, pick out some healthy habits to start saying and speaking to yourself with more love and light, and then reverse engineer the improvements themselves. And then have a plan. Have a plan. As we talk about self-care, we don't want to be haphazard. I've set intention several times. It's not by happenstance, but have a plan and believe in how you're going to execute changing your thoughts, changing your words, changing your habits, maybe changing the people around you. But my sister and I were reading Atomic Habits, and it talks about just incremental change, maybe not a large overhaul of a total life change, but maybe just today you don't talk to that person. And in a lot of cases, if we're being very honest, some of our biggest critics are our moms. So maybe you don't tell your mom about the new job that you want, or maybe you don't tell your mom about the new love interest that you have or the trip that you want to take. Maybe you just avoid the person that is going to be the biggest critic about what you're excited about. I know that there's this whole movement of not wanting, move in silence, real G's move in silence like lasagna, but sometimes being able to share good news and being able to have an accountability partner for positive things that you want to start is encouraging, and it's helpful. And so it may not be that you can't share your information with anyone, but just maybe you can't share it with certain people, especially the people that are always negative Nancy's and always talking down on whatever it is that you come up with. Like, girl, I don't know how you're going to do that. Or, girl, you just need to be fat and be happy. Or, girl, you just need to leave that. I mean, if you're trying to work on a relationship and you're constantly sharing that with someone who's miserable in a relationship, it's probably not going to work out. Not because you couldn't have salvaged it or had a positive relationship, but because you're in communication with someone that is constantly telling you why it's not going to work. And I'm not saying have a bunch of yes friends, but I'm saying be very cognizant of who it is that you're seeking counsel for and who it is that you're bouncing ideas off of, and not from a judgmental place. But if I know that I want to build a house, I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time in conversation with someone that doesn't believe in home ownership. But ching, like it just doesn't. It's probably not a good idea, right? If I know that I am looking to just come from a place of self-development and self-enrichment, right? I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time in conversation with someone that I've never seen read a book. I mean, it doesn't mean that I won't ever talk to that person, but I'm probably not going to share my ideas for developing a new skill with a person who's been doing the same thing for 15 years. No judgment. It's just probably not the place that should serve as the foundation for this shift that you're looking to make. And then if a person is constantly down on themselves, that's probably not someone that's really in a place to pour into you. And so you want to really look at how they think about themselves, how they talk about their situation. And again, not from a place from judgment, but from a place of just like auditing and understanding. Cut those conversations short. Well, girl, you know what? Let me go because this dryer is walking out the front door. I mean, whatever it is you have to come up with, if you see the conversation going south, don't just endure it, cut it short. Um, and definitely reframing is what we call it. So if you have experienced something in the past, it may be important that instead of saying, dang, I shouldn't have went and racked up all those student loans, or um, dang, if I just would have picked another, shout out to comedian and writer Mary Boyce. Maybe you could rephrase that as, you know what I learned from my education with interest, some great relationships, some people I wouldn't have met otherwise, right? Because how do you quantify finding friends and fellowship that have been there through some really incredibly tough moments, and some wins and some networking, right? So, making peace with the past is something that we definitely want to work on in this good old Black History Month, as we look at ourselves as legends and history makers, instead of saying, oh, you know, segregation was integration was the worst thing that ever happened to us. Just really being intentional about what that looks like today, and how can we leverage the new freedoms that we found over the last few years in order to position ourselves as if that hadn't hurt us. Okay, so what does that look like? Now, all of a sudden, while HBCUs have been in existence for years, it's cool because of the athletes. We're not going to go there tonight about how entertainers and athletes lead the way in so many different things in our society and in our culture. But now that we see, because in sociology, they teach us that like dissolves like, whether it's a single sex education or a homogenous cultural background with all Black, all white, we have learned that students fare better amongst the same, right? And so knowing that, let's look into the HBCUs. When we're looking for donation opportunities, those Giving Tuesdays, all of the things that come up, whether it's our time, our talents, panels, being able to call the Career Center and tell them about job opportunities that you have available as entrepreneurs and as corporate employees. Being able to, go to the schools and volunteer, being able to donate money, being able to just go to a game. That is the real, true Black history that we need to take part in. Yes, we do need to vote. We need to be aware of who is running. We need to be aware of their policies. But just like we rock the vote, there are daily opportunities for our Black history to be laid and made, for us to lay the foundation. And even the folks like myself that went to predominantly white institutions, if that is what it is, if my kid says, hey, my mom and my dad went to Texas A&M and I want to go, no shame, right? It doesn't mean anything less for the HBCUs that are out there, right? But let's find a way to create a legacy. I started an open mic that still goes on to this day at Texas A&M. We won't get into how a colonizer came along and said that they came up with it, but what I'm saying is that there's an opportunity, regardless of the environment, to make history, to make a way, to politely unfold your chair at the table that you weren't invited to, or that wasn't made with you in mind. The country wasn't made with you in mind, but that doesn't mean that we have to negate all of the opportunities that are here. And we know that when we look at other cultures and we see how they come to America and thrive, not even knowing English, we know that there's opportunity here for us to leverage. I think also part of Black history and self-care would be finally coming to a common ground with Africans. Africans and African Americans have historically not been the powerhouse that they could be because of certain perspectives of, arrogance on one side and laziness on the other. This is a good time to have conversations and come to an understanding as both Black people, whether you're African or African American. This is a great time to sit down and reframe those conversations intentionally. So, more tips on self-care and Black history is being very mindful of our thoughts and our emotions. Being in HR, there are so many times when people come to the conclusion that it's a good old boy thing, it's a Black thing. And sometimes, depending on your demographics, it is. But there are also times when the perspective could be shifted. Let's not start there with what is going on. Let's definitely trust but verify and look at, not from a I have to be 10 times better perspective, but look at it from the business standpoint, the bottom line, and really be intentional about our thoughts and our emotions. Because once you're in the state of emotion, then you've kind of already lost. And I've had a couple of opportunities for that this week myself, where I had an opportunity and did initially respond very calm, cool, collected. But I bring up this particular point because I believe that many races, many people looking to depower you, poetic license, have been taught from a very young age that certain words will immediately send you into an emotional frenzy. So if a 2-year-old white female knows that the N-word can make a grown woman or man react, then it's not just limited to that one word. There is a power dynamic that is taught that words are able to rob people of their dignity, their presence, and their power. And so, knowing that, it would be wise to counteract with awareness of our emotions and our thoughts and depower certain words and expressions so as to depower the people trying to rob you of yours. It's not going to be easy. But even as we look at the Nichols devastation, emotion and thoughts led to 6 people that otherwise functioned as normal adults with jobs having an absolute loss of power, position, family, and eventually freedom. So we know that emotions are powerful. And so it would be wise for us to be intentional about how we manage them. So, pretty much with my 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left, we have just discussed self care from an emotional standpoint. Comparing ourselves to others as Black women, we know that that is prevalent, and we want to be intentional as we would be about celebrating Black figures. We want to take and transfer that same intention to ourselves and how we think about ourselves and how we talk to each other and how we talk about each other. I'm real quick to tell people, I mean, unless you're about to pray for my success, keep your mouth off of me. It's not necessary. You don't have to say anything negative. You could just not say anything at all and pretend I don't even exist. So comparative criticism, internal criticism, how we talk to ourselves, how we talk about ourselves, knowing that we are enough, knowing that we do matter, and reframing the past, looking at opportunities to rewrite the narrative. That's our self-care. That's our Black history. That is how we will excel as a people. Sunday, we'll be back with yet another self-care lesson. Ideally, the other sisters will join me, but whatever they have to do to preserve self, as we've been locked in Texas, in snow, in Dallas, in snow and ice. We thank you all for your support. Please like, share, subscribe. On Instagram, we are at Dear Sisters Podcast. And I still don't know how to tell y'all the actual channel for YouTube, the address, but definitely look up Dear Sisters Podcast or the Poet Shook Avery on YouTube, and you'll be able to subscribe. And always on Facebook Live, Leonetta Shook Avery. We are so excited about this month's series and taking Black history to rewrite the narrative as we practice self-care and self-care practices. Until Sunday, love and light.